My eyes fluttered open, and the very first thing I saw was my elder stepsister Mara sunk down onto the floor. Her shoulders shook hard. Sobs poured out of her, every breath tangled up in all the wrongs she insisted she'd suffered. I just stared frozen, my mind struggling to catch up with what sat right in front of me. Then our mother gave that small, awkward cough. It cut sharp through Mara's weeping. She turned toward me, her voice soft but heavy. Aloan, what do you make of everything your sister has just told us? That question snapped me fully back to reality. I understood instantly. I'd been thrown right back into this fateful moment from years gone by. I didn't waste a heartbeat. I shook my head firmly. Mother, this arrangement cannot happen. It is completely improper. Before our mother could get another word out, Mara cut in. Her tone was sharp, burning with resentment. What's improper about it? We're both daughters of the Marquis household. And I'm the oldest one, remember? She lifted her chin. Her almond-shaped eyes glistened, already filling fast with tears. You're the one set to wed the Chun family heir. You get to marry into one of the realm's most respected noble houses. And what's waiting for me? Nothing more than marriage to a servant's son. Her teeth dug lightly into her lower lip. Tears began rolling down her cheeks. Mother, is this all because I wasn't born from your womb? Do you treat us so differently just for that? Her voice wobbled. She talked about losing her birth mother at such a young age. She told our mother how she'd always looked on her as her very own real mother. Mother could no longer stay sitting calmly in her armchair. She set her teacup down with a clink, hurried across the room, and pulled Mara tight against her chest. She stroked her back over and over, murmuring quiet reassurances. Don't speak such foolish things, Mother said gently. You and Aloan are both my girls. You grew up right beneath my care. I would never favor one over the other. She sighed, her tone turning thoughtful. I know Kale is this year's top-ranked scholar. I won't deny his origins are humble. If you truly hate the thought of marrying him, I can speak for you to break that betrothal off, but swapping your marriage for Aloan's. Mother's gaze drifted over toward me. Hesitation clouded her face. This plan dragged my own future straight into the mess. After all that, I poured myself a cup of steaming tea. Sitting calm and composed off to one side, I broke into her train of thought before she could go any further. There is no point in weighing this over, Mother. Even if you force me to agree to this swap, it would accomplish nothing. The Chun household will never accept such a thing. I took a slow sip of my tea before I kept going. Trading brides on a whim won't bind our two houses in alliance. It will make a powerful enemy instead. On paper, both families hold marquis titles, so it looks as though we stand as equals. But the Younging Marquis line has produced generations of high-ranking officials and hereditary nobles. Our Jiang household simply cannot compare. And the Chun family will not welcome just any woman into their bloodline. Mara refused to believe a single word I said. She cried out loud and pressed herself deeper into Mother's embrace. We are both daughters of this Marquis house, she protested. When younger sister marries into their family, everyone calls it a match forged in heaven. If I try to take that same place, suddenly it's an act of open hostility? Are you saying you've secretly looked down on me all along? She paused for just a beat. A crafty glint flickered behind her tear-filled eyes. Or could it be that you already know I crossed paths with Chani at that banquet several nights ago? He treated me. Right there her body started trembling as if overwhelming fright gripped her. Her sobs grew so violent she could not finish her sentence. She never spelled out what had supposedly happened, but the suggestion hanging in the air was more than enough to plant wild, unspoken guesses in anyone's mind. That Mother's brows drew tightly together. She glanced first at Mara, then turned her eyes onto me. She bowed her head, genuinely mulling over whether swapping these two marriages might somehow work out. She failed to notice the woman tucked in her arms. Mara's lips had curled upward into a quiet, self-satisfied smile. There was no trace of genuine grief anywhere on her features. Mara was not Mother's biological child. She was Father's daughter from those reckless years long ago, when he'd run away from home to wander across the martial realms. Her birth mother cared for nothing except money. She stayed alongside Father for many years, with no official status, no formal title to her name. The second she realized Father possessed no more wealth for her to steal, She stripped away every last coin he owned and vanished. River bandits killed her later on. Not even a body was ever recovered. After that tragedy, father gave up his dream of roaming distant lands. He came back home carrying the small child Mara in tow. Once he inherited the marquis title, he wed our mother. Mara's name was officially added under mother's household registry that she was father's firstborn child. He'd raised her with his own 2 hands. Naturally, she occupied a uniquely precious spot in his heart that terrified that other nobles would sneer at her origins. He ignored every objection from the clan. He opened the ancestral hall and inscribed her into the official family genealogy as the legitimate eldest daughter. But Mara was already old enough by then to understand mother had not given birth to her. Even with that lofty status written down in the family records, discontent simmered inside her endlessly. The moment I was born, she started comparing every single thing between us. Our monthly stipends, the fabric of our clothing, our jewelry, every provision we received was kept exactly the same for both of us. Still, she constantly wailed about how miserable life was for a girl without a birth mother. Father spoiled her even more because of it. Time and time again, he demanded that I yield and give way to her wishes. I devoted years of my life to mastering string instrument art. Freezing winter nights and scorching summer days never stopped me. Through relentless practice, I built extraordinary skill. Mara would not put in the work. She never once looked inward to examine her own laziness. That instead, she accused our music tutor of playing favorites. She claimed he hid his best techniques from her, saving all his real knowledge just for me. After one of her crying fits, father banned me entirely from playing that instrument inside our manor. All because the sound upset Mara. I loved embroidery deeply. I poured countless hours learning how to blend fine painting with delicate needlework. Eventually, I invented an embroidered painting style that became famous all across the capital. Mara wanted to learn this craft as well. But whenever the needle pricked her fingertips, she complained of terrible pain. She claimed the embroidery mistress mother hired was completely incompetent, that another round of her tearful tantrums followed. As a result, I was forbidden from attending capital banquets. Father's excuse was that if I shone too brightly, others would grow jealous of me. Stories like these piled up without end. Whenever I refused to step back for Mara, I got labeled as disrespectful, unkind to my elder sister. The harsh rules of our household would be brought down upon me without fail. That after so many repeated incidents, I finally saw through father's blatant favoritism. I stopped hoping he would treat me fairly. I no longer bothered competing for his affection at all. As we grew older, Mara seemed far more restrained on the surface. I thought she had finally grown sensible. I never guessed she was merely plotting something far bigger, swapping our betrothals. She never acknowledged that Chun-Yi was the youngest top-ranked scholar in the whole history of our great Jing dynasty, with boundless potential ahead of him. All she fixated on was humiliation. Both his grandmother-in-law and mother-in-law had once served as maids inside our marquis estate. That marriage to Scholar Kale had been arranged by father only after Mara rejected one candidate after another for years. He feared she would spin into an old maid with no husband at all. That my own engagement was different. The Chun family themselves had come forward to formally propose the match. The moment I reached marriageable age, mother never meddled. She showed no obvious partiality toward either of us. Mara screamed about unfair treatment purely because she understood mother had a gentle heart. She knew mother treated her like her own flesh and blood daughter, and could be manipulated into granting what she wanted. Even if her schemes got exposed, the lady of the house, mother, would step up and bear all blame. Mara would escape any real consequences. She had been spoiled beyond all reason. Hanging on to the story of losing her mother young, she carried herself with arrogant pride. She dared to scheme to exchange our wedding fates. But not every person in this world would indulge her whims without limit. She planned to toss out vague, suggestive words to make others imagine an improper secret romance, so she could reach her goal. I would not let her succeed. That elder sister, I said. I lifted my eyes and locked onto her with a sharp, unyielding stare. Are you trying to say my fiancé Chun-Yi has fallen for you? That the two of you have shared secret affection and carried on an illicit affair? Mara had not expected me to voice that suspicion so bluntly. Her face instantly turned ashen. I watched her fingernails dig hard into the skin of her palms. Humiliation washed across every feature of her face. I lowered my gaze and let out a cold, quiet laugh. She could not even bear hearing the idea spoken aloud. This was only the very beginning. That while she sat stunned, too shocked to respond, I put on a show of flying into rage. I hurled the teacup I held in my hands. One is my betrothed. The other is my own elder sister. Have either of you no shred of decency? The teacup struck Mara square on her forehead, right as she peeked out from Mother's embrace. She let out a sharp scream. An ugly swelling immediately rose on her brow. Hot tea splattered all over Mother's robes. Eloan, you have gone much too far, Mother shouted once her shock faded. She is your elder sister. Once she even saved your life. No matter what she may have said or done wrong, you cannot lay hands on her. Once again, that so-called life-saving deed from years past was brought up. Mother accused me of ingratitude, of attacking my elder sister over a man. Mara quickly joined in, sobbing loudly. Mother, please do not scold her. Mara gasped between cries. Even if younger sister treats me this way because of a man, I still do not regret saving her life. I remembered that day clearly. When we were small children, Mother took Mara, my little brother Kian, and me to visit our maternal grandparents. Father was away on official business. Mara refused to stay home alone. She threw a fit until we let her tag along. During a rest stop on our journey, she played carelessly with fire. That foolish act drew mountain bandits straight to our campsite. Mother had grown up inside a military household. Even though she disliked weapons, she had learned martial arts training from her father for several years. Trapped in that desperate moment, she drew a long bow and led our guards to fight back against the raiders. Our wet nurse pulled Kian and Mara toward the back to hide. But one bandit snuck around, found our hiding spot. He killed our wet nurse, protecting us. Mara shook all over, paralyzed by terror. Faced with that vicious outlaw, she shoved me forward. Don't kill me, she had shrieked. I am of low standing. She is the Marquis household's young lady. Kill her instead of me. I was terrified beyond words. As the bandit advanced toward me, I held Kian tight and used my own body to shield him. Mara tried to run away. For some twist of fate, she tripped. She fell directly on top of Kian and me. Mother arrived just in time. An arrow from her bow killed the bandit. But she misread the scene laid out before her eyes. She believed Mara had thrown herself over Kian and me to protect us from harm. From that day onward, Mother trusted Mara completely and loved her with sincere devotion. Back then I was far too young. Fear overwhelmed me, and I fell into a fever that would not break. Nobody bothered to ask what had truly unfolded. By the time I grew old enough to speak plainly of what had happened, the whole capital accepted the tale of Mara risking her life to save my brother and me as absolute truth. The daughters of one household shared honor and shame together. So I never exposed her lie. But now she dared invoke that false heroism right in front of me. She thought I had forgotten. She intended to twist black into white. I stepped forward. I dragged Mara out of Mother's arms and shoved her hard onto the floor. I straddled over her body and landed slap after slap across her face. Mara, you are shameless. My voice rang clear. You were the one playing with fire, drawing bandits down upon us. Mother, our wet nurse, every guard risked their lives defending us. Yet you let the captain of our guards take blame for picking a poor campsite. He died carrying that false accusation, and his family received not a single coin of compensation. You pushed me toward that bandit so you could run for your own life. How dare you pretend you saved me? Where do you find such audacity? Mother stood frozen, stunned by these revelations. By the time she snapped out of her shock, I had struck Mara more than 10 times. Her face swelled beyond recognition. Her eyes were nearly shut. Her lips split open, blood streaming down her chin. She could barely force out any words. Mother rushed forward and hauled me to my feet. Eloan, have you lost your senses? Look at what you have done to her. Where is your breeding? I rose calmly. I smoothed out my rumpled clothing. My lips curved into a faint, polite bow. Mother, your lesson holds truth. My posture made my point crystal clear. I did possess proper breeding. But good manners depended entirely on whom you stood before. And Mara was not worthy of such courtesy. Mother could find nothing to say in reply. She wanted to examine Mara's injuries, yet did not know where to begin. She ordered servants to fetch a physician. She looked toward me with a heavy, pained headache clouding her features. I will look into what truly took place, she told me. Still, under no circumstances should you have struck her. Go kneel in the ancestral hall. Copy the family rules 100 times. You will remain confined there until you admit you were wrong. Mother was busy tending to Mara. She could not supervise me personally. She assigned several elderly maids to escort me to the ancestral hall. Every single one of those women was loyal to Mara. Along our walk, they complained loudly on her behalf. They never bothered lowering their voices. Who would guess our quiet second young lady could be so cruel? One maid muttered, "Look how beaten the eldest young lady's face is. What if those wounds leave permanent scars?" Everything eldest young lady said must hold truth. Another chimed in, "Who knows how second young lady tormented her when no eyes were watching?" Every comment painted me as calculating and vicious. Servants and maids passing by all overheard. They stared at me, filled with shock. Before long, this distorted version of events would spread through every corner of the estate that this was Mara's usual trick. She used gossip to cast herself as the wounded victim, to win more favors for herself. Back when Mother carried me in her womb, Mara once had spoken eagerly, wondering whether the coming baby would be a brother or sister. She promised to act as a good elder sister, to take us out and play. But these very same gossiping old maids visited her. They planted trouble in her ear. They told her mother would love her less once her own biological child arrived. They said she lived like a stepdaughter, destined to endless unfair grievances. They claimed they acted out of kindness, determined to save her from oppression. Young and naive, Mara fell for their poisonous words. Whenever she felt slighted, she gave those women money and trinkets, pouring out her sorrows to them. The maids embroidered and exaggerated every complaint, spreading stories all across the capital. Everyone came to believe the motherless Mara led a pitiful existence. People gave her endless tolerance and affection as a result. Once she tasted all the benefits this lie brought her, she protected those maids fiercely. She would never allow them to face punishment. But every good fortune in this world carries two sides. Those wolves she sheltered would one day bring her terrible suffering. I chose not to argue. I pretended I could not hear their whispers. I stepped inside the ancestral hall. Copies of the family rules, brushes, ink blocks, paper and ink stones sat arranged off to one side. Yet I had no intention of copying a single line. I barely glanced at those supplies. I simply settled down onto a floor cushion and drifted into a light doze. Midnight rolled around. Under a thin scattering of stars, I caught movement outside the window. I rubbed my numb calves, stood upright and pulled open the window. Exactly as I expected, Chini stood there. Moonlight spilled soft silver light all over his frame. He was tall, graceful. His features were so finely handsome he hardly seemed human. I stared for a moment, then found my lips curving upward without thinking. "What brings you here at this hour?" Chini lifted one eyebrow. He braced a hand against the windowsill and leaped cleanly inside. He shook a cloth bundle he held. Dark eyes sparkled in the dim night. "Word has spread everywhere about the Jiang household's second young lady beating her elder sister. As your fiancé, of course I needed to come check on you." He untied the bundle. He pulled out a thick fox fur cloak and draped it gently over my shoulders. "The night wind is sharp. Wear this to stay warm." Next, he set dish after dish of food out before me. He held out a pair of chopsticks toward my hands. "I guessed you would be starving. Eat while it is still hot." I had not eaten a bite all day. My stomach gnawed with hunger. I skipped formal politeness and ate. While I worked through the meal, I told him every detail of everything that had happened. Chuni stared, utterly disbelieving that she wanted to swap your two marriages. When I confirmed it, he reacted as though he had heard the most absurd story imaginable. A low, mocking laugh escaped him. "Is Mara out of her mind? Does she imagine that just because she wishes to marry me, I must accept her? Does she think the Chen family takes in any filth that wanders our way?" His words held no mercy. Even so, in his eyes she was nothing more than a powerless clown. "I cannot step in directly," he explained. "But do not fear. When I return home, I will report this whole affair to my mother. I will ask her to handle it. Still, I knew even Chen Yi's mother would not be enough. She valued tradition and proper etiquette above much else. She would weigh the long-standing friendship between our two households. She would think about the reputations of both young women. She would never drag Mara's schemes out into open daylight for all to witness. She would simply plan a visit, drop subtle hints, and hope Mara backed down of her own accord. That approach was far too gentle. In my previous life, Mara had exploited exactly that kind of opening. She pretended to give up her ambitions. She let everyone lower their guard. Then she moved all her plotting into shadows, where they grew far harder to detect. I would not repeat those old mistakes. I had to warn him. Once Mara sets her heart on something, she will not back off easily. Chen Yi's brows drew slightly together. He looked at me with clear surprise. I lowered my gaze and spoke softly. We could first break or postpone our engagement. She is desperate for this marriage swap. But she needs another marriage to swap with. She is 4 years older than I am. I can afford to wait 4 years to wed. She cannot. Warmth in Chen Yi's eyes froze over. He fell quiet for several heartbeats. His long lashes dropped, casting faint shadows over his eyelids, hiding the turbulent feelings stirring underneath. Eloan, he said. Do you treat our betrothal like some trivial game? You speak of breaking it as though it means nothing. Do you no longer care what others will whisper about your reputation? What if everything shifts once we end or delay this agreement? Have you decided you do not want me anymore? I stayed silent through all his questions. Once he finished speaking, I poured him a cup of tea. Before I could pass it across, he reached out and seized my wrist. His dark eyes locked straight onto mine. Eloan, if you want me to take certain actions, say it plainly. Do not throw words like those out just to rile me. I hate that. My body stiffened. I turned my head away. Calling off our engagement would mean surrendering without putting up a fight. That had never been my real plan. I only said it to push him to act directly. That I understood why he said he could not intervene openly, all for my sake. If he stepped forward with sharp, unforgiving moves, he could shut every single avenue Mara hoped to take. The scandal would roar across the whole capital. Mara would lose all honor. But as another daughter of the Jiang household, gossip would drag my own name through the mud as well. Still, a person's conduct belongs to themselves. Reputation, though, that lives in other people's mouths. I could not control how strangers judged me. I refused to let public opinion dictate how I chose to live. A title outside my body meant so much less than living freely that I had simply not expected him to see right through my little ploy so quickly. I pressed my lips tight together and chose honesty. Chen Yi, another woman wants to push your future wife aside, so she can marry you herself. Why should you hold on to so many reservations? His breath hitched. In an instant he grasped my full meaning. Very well, he said. I will take care of this matter myself. After speaking, he seemed lost deep in thought. He still held my wrist. I gave a small tug that jolted him back to the moment. He pulled his hand away fast as though he had been burned. A flush of red spread across his pale, jade-like cheeks. His calm composure dissolved. His gaze darted everywhere, avoiding my eyes. I did not intend. I know, I told him, smiling. For a stretch of time neither of us said anything. Then the distant sound of night watchmen striking their clapper cut through the quiet dark. He stood up abruptly. It grows far too late. I must leave. But after he pushed open the window and felt the cold night air, he spun back toward me. The ancestral hall is freezing to spend an entire night in. Let me carry you back to your quarters first. I had never planned to sleep there all night. I still had arrangements to finish. Since he offered help, I agreed readily. Then Chen Yi glanced over at me. Red color flooded from his face all the way down to his neck. After a long, awkward pause, he forced words out. Forgive my rudeness. He slipped one arm around my waist. In one smooth motion he leaped out the window with me. We bounded lightly across several rooftops until we arrived in my courtyard. The second his feet touched solid ground, he pulled his arm away and hid it behind his back. He stepped backward several paces, bowing slightly. You should rest. I take my leave now. I watched him practically flee, clearly flustered. I blinked once or twice, and could not resist teasing him. Will you come tomorrow morning to carry me all the way back to the ancestral hall? I put heavy emphasis on that single word. Carry. Chun-Yi involuntarily turned his head toward me. Whatever images crossed his mind made him stumble. He nearly tripped right off the edge of the rooftop. I burst out laughing that he looked so shy and flustered. But when he heard me laugh freely, his previously stern expression softened completely. Very well, he answered, returning my smile. I will come fetch you in the morning. But he lied that by the time I finished setting everything in order and laid down to rest, midnight was nearly upon us. Even so, I kept hearing faint, intermittent laughter drifting over from my courtyard. Our agreement still stood. At first light, a very awake Chun-Yi tapped on my window. Heavy dark circles hung underneath his eyes, and his expression carried a hint of resentment. I followed him back to the ancestral hall. It seemed as if he had decided to take root in that place. Every single day he came. We drank tea together, played chess, read side by side. Every night he carried me back to my own courtyard that I truly could not understand. Did he never need sleep? He had never acted in such a way before. Eventually I grew far too embarrassed to keep telling him to go away. Thankfully, after several days, events began moving forward. Chun-Yi suddenly invited me to join him at a banquet. I guess Mara's facial injuries were mostly healed. It was only a matter of time before she tried another scheme that I disguised myself as one of Chun-Yi's maids. A silk veil covered my face. I went along with him. Our first showdown unfolded at a flower viewing feast hosted by Princess Ailing. Mara deliberately walked a short distance ahead of Chun-Yi. She let an embroidered handkerchief slip from her fingers. Then she hid nearby, watching everything unfold in secret. Her trick was crude, clumsy, almost embarrassing to witness. I gave a faint, quiet smile. I stepped forward and picked up that handkerchief. I made a show of handing it toward Chun-Yi, yet I used my body to block Mara's line of sight. Instead of giving it to him, I passed it to the young manservant standing behind him. At the same time, Chun-Yi silently pulled his own plain handkerchief out of his sleeve. He glanced down at it, then tucked it back. He acted out the whole charade of having picked something up off the ground. We had not walked far when Mara hurried to catch up with us. She bowed low. She lowered her eyes, a shy blush coloring her cheeks. Young Master Chun, I accidentally dropped my handkerchief just now. Several guests saw you pick it up. Please give it back to me. Chun-Yi refused to acknowledge her claim. The onlookers must be mistaken. I never picked up your handkerchief. Her eyes glistened. She looked bashful and timid all at once. Young Master Chin, a lady's handkerchief counts as private property. If it gets lost out in public, my reputation will suffer great harm. Please do not hide it from me. Mara insisted the handkerchief rested with Chun-Yi. He kept repeating he did not have it. They went back and forth like this for several rounds. The expressions of all the surrounding onlookers began shifting. Mara spoke with total conviction. Surely, people thought, she would not gamble her own good name on a lie. Could her handkerchief truly be in Chun-Yi's possession? If so, why would he refuse to return it? Why would a man keep a woman's handkerchief hidden, unless he held romantic feelings for her? And was he not already betrothed to me? Whispers rose up from every direction. All kinds of wild speculation spread. This was exactly the outcome Mara wanted. That if that handkerchief had only passed through Chun-Yi's hands, she could trap him in a situation with no clean escape. Whether he handed it over or denied holding it, she could keep insisting he had secretly kept it for himself. Once enough people repeated that story, it would become accepted proof he desired her. Then, if her plot to swap marriages came to light, she would have endless excuses to defend herself. She could shift all blame away. Mara looked at Chun-Yi like a hunter watching prey trapped within her snare. She lifted her lashes as if ready to say more. Young Master Chun, she said. If this were any ordinary handkerchief, I would never argue over it. But the one I lost bears a bright moon stitched into its fabric. It absolutely cannot remain out in public. Chun-Yi glanced toward me helpless. His look seemed to ask, does she always put on this much theater? I gave the tiniest, almost invisible nod. He sighed as if surrendering to fate. He reached into his sleeve and pulled out a handkerchief. Mara's eyes lit up with wild joy. Then he unfolded the cloth and shook it open for every guest present to see. Not a single pattern decorated it. It was completely plain, unadorned. Look closely, Chani said loud and clear. I have not hidden your handkerchief. And naturally, I hold no interest in you either. Going forward, please stop latching onto me without cause. Mara's smile froze solid. Her face drained of all color, turning deathly pale. Even so, she would not back down. She adopted an expression of wounded forbearance. Young Master Chen, because you are my younger sister's fiancé, I originally wanted to preserve some dignity for you. I had no wish to press the matter of you hiding my handkerchief. I only wanted it returned. I never imagined you would humiliate me this way. She tilted her chin upward. Very well. I will call forward my witness right this instant. Just at that moment, commotion stirred within the crowd. But the person pushing through was not the witness Mara had arranged. It was an old beggar dressed in ragged, torn clothing. He held high an embroidered handkerchief. He squeezed through the gathered guests and shouted, "The handkerchief is here with me. I have come." People around him pinched their noses and stepped backward. That let the beggar walk all the way over to Mara without obstruction. She stared blankly at the cloth in his grasp. "Why is my handkerchief in your hands?" Earlier, the young manservant had secretly sought out this beggar. The beggar knew nothing of the full scheme, but he certainly would not tell Mara the truth. He looked her up and down. His gaze lingered, almost drooling. "Did you not give this to me yourself? You told me this would be our secret token. You said I should come here for a private meeting. How else could a man like me gain entry to an event such as this?" Strange, judging stares surrounded Mara. No amount of talking could get her out of this mess. Her body swayed. She looked close to collapsing. "What nonsense are you spouting?" she cried. "How could I possibly arrange a secret meeting with someone like you?" The beggar already had his lines readied. "Is it because you have unusual tastes, and take a fancy to men just like me? Come, let me draw a little nearer to you. I have missed you terribly." He lunged toward her. Mara screamed in terror and fled in panic. Nobody paid any further mind to Chani. In no time at all, suggestive gossip linking Mara and the beggar spread through every corner of the capital. Our second confrontation unfolded during a spring countryside outing. Chun-Yi and I rested inside a garden pavilion. Out of the corner of my eye, I spotted Mara creeping toward us. I sent Chun-Yi a quick signal with my eyes. He shifted his position right away. He stood exactly where she would need him to be for her trick to work. I turned my back, pretending to focus entirely on brewing tea. Mara brightened. She moved forward slowly. She stretched both hands out toward Chun-Yi. From her posture, her plan was crystal clear. She meant to shove him into the lake. She wanted to stage a scene where both of them tumbled into the water together. But luck abandoned her. Chun-Yi reacted with incredible speed. The very second she put force behind her push, he twisted sideways and stepped out of reach. Unable to pull back her momentum, Mara pitched forward and fell straight into the lake herself. She looked toward Chun-Yi and screamed for help. She hoped he would dive in after her. He never moved. Instead, he held back all the guests rushing over at the noise. "Any man who is unmarried, or already betrothed, must not go in to rescue her," he stated bluntly. One guest looked thoroughly confused. "Why not?" Chani answered with complete seriousness. "You are still young. You would not understand. If you pull a woman out of the water, and she clings onto you afterward, you may never shake her loose." Several of the married men nearby looked almost eager to give it a try. At exactly that moment, Kale arrived. When he saw the woman floating in the water was his own fiancée, he jumped straight in without hesitation. He swam back to shore carrying Mara. He took off his outer robe and wrapped it around her trembling body, shielding her from all the prying eyes of onlookers. He wiped lake water from his face. He supported Mara and walked over toward Chen. "If I had not arrived just in time, Mara could have perished," Kale said. "Chani, even if you refused to jump in yourself, you should not have stopped others from helping her. Mara is nothing like the woman you described." Mara weakly tugged at Kale's sleeve, sobbing. "It is all right, and it is only natural he would refuse to save me. I hold no grudge." Chun-Yi's eyebrow twitched almost imperceptibly. He said nothing. He reached out, pulled Kale a short distance aside, and kicked Mara right back into the cold lake. Kale was horrified. "What are you doing?" He prepared to leap in once more. Then he noticed every shout and murmur from the surrounding guests had fallen dead silent, caught completely off guard. Mara instinctively moved her arms and legs to stay afloat. She exposed the truth. She knew perfectly well how to swim at just the right moment. I lowered my voice and added my comment for those nearby to hear. I have heard Mara's birth mother was a boatman's daughter. Mara grew up beside the water from childhood. That fact was no secret. Mara herself had spent years telling everyone she lost her mother young, just to earn people's pity. Chani shot Kale a sideways glance. That look said plainly, you see I was right. Kale understood instantly. His expression darkened. Realizing she had given herself away, Mara started pretending to struggle again. She was desperate enough to grit her teeth and let herself sink down under the surface of the lake. Kale stayed silent for a very long time. When she still failed to rise, he jumped back in and hauled her out. Spring had arrived, bringing warmer weather. Yet the lake water remained bitterly cold. Mara had been submerged far too long for her body to endure. She lost full consciousness. Kale had no choice but to take her home and send for a physician. Once all the guests dispersed, Chani leaned close to me. His eyes shone bright, like a young puppy seeking praise. How did I do? Surely she will give up her schemes now, will she not? I thought back to a fluffy white puppy I had raised long ago in our garden. It loved to roll around near my feet, wagging its tail. Mara had coveted that animal. When treats and toys failed to lure it away from me, she strangled it. To her, Chani was like that puppy. Something precious that sat right before her, yet could never truly belong to her. She would not surrender. She would grow even more reckless and ruthless. Do not grow complacent, I warned him. A cornered dog will leap over a wall. Chani lifted his brows, brimming with confidence. Fear not. Forget leaping over walls. Even if she grows desperate enough to wallow in filth, she will not stir so much as a single bubble. Nothing she does will work. There is no need to paint the picture that disgustingly, I replied. 3 days later, his boast came back to haunt him. Chani stumbled into the ancestral hall. His cheeks burned bright red. It looked as though he had been drugged. I nearly jumped out of my skin with fright. Mara is truly shameless, he gasped, his breathing uneven. She craves my body so badly she actually dared to slip me a drug. My heart clenched tight. What exactly happened? Weren't you attending a wedding banquet held at the Minister of Revenue's estate today? How did you end up drugged? Ever since Mara had fallen into the lake, she seemed to have worked out that I could hear her conversations. She ordered several elderly maids to keep watch around the ancestral hall. I had no opening to slip out and follow Chani. I never imagined such a terrible crisis would strike. Worry surged through me. I pulled him closer. I scanned over every inch of him. His clothing stayed reasonably neat. Only then could I breathe a small sigh of relief. From what I can see, she did not succeed in her goal. Am I correct? Chani drank an entire pot of cold tea before his breathing steadied. Of course she failed. I kicked her away, he told me. Someone spilled liquid to ruin my clothing. I was led to a side chamber to change garments. When I stepped inside, I found Mara already lying there. Incense burned in that room, and it was tainted. The moment I crossed the threshold, my blood began burning hot. I nearly lost control of myself. Fortunately, my will held firm. When she threw herself at me, I kicked her clean out of that chamber. Right at that exact moment, a beggar had crawled through a dog hole, hoping to scavenge leftover food. He happened to be outside the room. Mara grabbed hold of him and clung to his body. The witnesses she had prearranged arrived exactly in time to see them tangled together. Relief lingered heavy in Chani's eyes. I fled quickly and slipped into the crowd she had gathered. If they had trapped me inside that room, not even 100 mouths speaking for me could clear my name. He stared at me for several long breaths. Then his gaze flickered. He held his breath and quietly edged his body closer toward mine. Eloan, he said, his voice rough and low. I also breathed in that tainted incense. Moisture glistened in his dark eyes. Eloan, I was drugged. He had barely escaped grave danger, yet right now he looked as if he was at death's door. His expression was completely blank, that I planted one palm against his forehead. I pushed him firmly away, keeping distance between us. He nearly leaned right into me. And you still dare to say that? I told him. He froze. Then he recalled his own earlier words about a cornered dog wallowing in filth. An awkward laugh escaped him. Must you use that image to describe me? Does it not fit you perfectly well? I shot back that we looked into each other's eyes. I could no longer tell who laughed first. In the next instant, helpless laughter burst out from both of us. That once we calmed down, I asked him, "Was that beggar someone you arranged ahead of time? What has become of him?" Chun-Yi gave a quiet nod of confirmation. My mother's people had him beaten, but his death was no injustice. Do you remember the beggar from the handkerchief incident? It was that very same man. His act of looking wretched was not performance. I had him investigated afterward. We learned he had killed a man in the past. Today's crisis happened unexpectedly, so I had him brought over to the estate. Chun-Yi told this story lightly. He did not spell out how close to disaster we had come, but I understood exactly how high the stakes had been. One tiny misstep in Mara's plot would have triumphed, ruining everything we had fought for. He could never predict every trick she would pull. He could only stay endlessly alert, meeting each attack as it arrived. I looked at his slightly messy hair. My heart turned soft, twisted with sympathy. I reached out and took hold of his hand. "Chi, you handled everything wonderfully. Thank you." He turned his palm over and laced his fingers through mine. He stared for a long time at our interlocked hands. His long lashes trembled. He coughed, clearly embarrassed. On my journey back here, I spotted messengers from the Jiang household hurrying toward the military barracks. After such a massive scandal, your father will return home from the camps for certain. Do you wish to see how events unfold next? I agreed. I needed to see whether father would keep indulging Mara without limit. I also needed to learn if Kale's family would still want to go through with their marriage to her. Chun-Yi carried me up onto the rooftop directly above father's study. We arrived at precisely the right moment. Old Madam Chen had come in person to formally dissolve the engagement between Kale and Mara. She was Kale's grandmother. She had been father's wet nurse long ago. She loved him like her very own son. Father could not refuse her demands. He had no face left to try convincing her to stay. He gave his consent immediately, yet once he politely walked her out of the room, he smashed the full tea set sitting in his study to pieces. He ordered servants to bring Mara before him. Rage with nowhere else to pour out boiled inside him. He slammed his fist against the table and roared. "I arranged this marriage with Kale for you. If you hated the thought of wedding him, you could have spoken to me. I would have helped you break the betrothal. Even if you set your heart on Chun-Yi, you could have come to me. I would have tried to find some way. But why take matters into your own hands? To act recklessly on your own was bad enough. How could you be foolish enough to stir up such filthy public scandal?" He already knew Mara wanted to swap my marriage for hers. A small amount of thought let him piece together the whole truth. But he held no hard proof against Chun-Yi, so he could only unleash his helpless fury upon Mara. Mara trembled in terror. She already felt deeply humiliated after the beggar ruined her reputation. Father's angry words made her feel wronged. Tears spilled fast down her face. "I already told you I did not wish to marry him," she cried. Father paused. As if recalling something important. "You complained Kale's origins were too humble. But he is our realm's top-ranked scholar. With my backing, he will rise quickly through official ranks. You two grew up as childhood companions. His grandmother treats you as one of her own granddaughters. You would have lived in his household just as comfortably as you do at home. What more could you possibly want?" Mara roughly wiped her tears with the back of her hand. Her jaw set in stubborn defiance. "I am not satisfied. Even if Kale becomes chief minister one day, that cannot change the truth. Everyone in his family once worked as servants. Ever since this engagement became public knowledge, people have laughed behind my back. I am the Marquis household's legitimate eldest daughter. Why should I be forced to marry a servant's son?" The more she spoke, the more wronged she felt. Her tears flowed without pause. Father fell silent. He could find nothing left to say. Mara sobbed. She bit her lower lip. Tentatively she made her request. "Father, now that my engagement with Kale is broken off, can you go to the Chan household and propose marriage on my behalf? Chun-Yi has already touched your daughter. Can you make him take responsibility for me? Beside my ear, Chanyi's face turned bright green with rage. He ground his teeth and whispered, "Of my entire body, only the sole of my shoe ever came into contact with her." I leaned backward a little, escaping the warmth of his breath. I nodded absently, still watching Father play out the scene below us. Father sat stunned. He drew several deep breaths. He forced words out through clenched teeth. "Every witness saw you tangled up with that beggar. Not Shani. How can I possibly force him to take responsibility?" Mara's expression fell with disappointment. "You cannot make him do it, Father. You are truly powerless." Father gasped. He stared at her for a very long time. He let out a heavy, deep sigh and sank back down into his chair that I no longer wished to watch. I should have known how this would end. Father would not punish her. Still, because I had never received that same unconditional favor, I found myself hoping against hope for a different outcome. Back in the ancestral hall, Chani sat beside me in quiet stillness. He waited for me to pull myself out of my swirling thoughts. "A person cannot choose their parents," he said gently. "But you can shape the rest of your life, Aloan. I will always stand on your side." Mara faced zero punishment. That night, under the moonlight, she came to the ancestral hall all by herself. Chani had already departed. I had told him to remove every item that should not belong in this space, that I had half expected Father might stop by the ancestral hall to pay respects to our ancestors, since he so rarely returned from the military camps. Instead, Mara showed up. She held her chin high, carrying the air of someone granting me a great favor. At that wedding banquet today, Chani and I accidentally shared intimate physical contact. Kale's family has already called off our engagement. Soon the Chun household will come to end yours as well. Still, you are my younger sister. I wish to leave you a shred of dignity. You should take the initiative and tell Chani you want to withdraw from the betrothal. She still had not given up. She had fabricated this lie to deceive me. Or perhaps she had come purely to test whether I knew every detail of what had taken place. The corner of my lips curved in faint amusement. My gaze traveled slowly across every feature of her face. You did not end your engagement with Kale out of your own choice. Your own scandal made them reject you. Mara's eyes flew wide open. Her whole face flushed bright red. You truly know everything. It was you, was it not? You were there when I fell in the lake. That beggar was also your doing. You set out to ruin me. Wretch! She screamed hysterically. I am your elder sister. How could you harm me this way? She rushed forward as if she intended to strike me. I laughed softly and twisted my wrist. Mara froze instantly. Fear flashed across her face. Yet she could not bring herself to leave without throwing out one last threat. She ground her teeth together. Just you wait. I will make you suffer for all of this. Her promised revenge arrived at midnight. At the second I caught faint movement outside, I curled myself into a corner. I pretended to be sound asleep. Through the tiny crack between my eyelashes, I watched Mara quietly push the door open and slip inside. She stared at me for a long while, hatred burning in her eyes. Then she lifted an oil lamp. She poured lamp oil all across the floor beside me. Her plan was to make it look as if I had dozed off and accidentally knocked the lamp over. She wanted to set the ancestral hall ablaze and burn me alive. She did not fear that the spirits of our Jiang ancestors might climb out from the grave to demand answers from her. That I let out an almost silent cold laugh. The instant she lit the flame and turned to flee, I sprang up from the floor. I grabbed hold of her and dragged her down. I knocked over the lampstand. All the remaining lamp oil splashed across her clothing. You want to burn me to death? Then you burn first. No. Stop. Mara screamed until her voice cracked. She rolled frantically across the floor, trying desperately to get away. She watched helplessly as I tossed the burning flame toward her. Fire roared upward. Flames shot high enough to light up the entire Jiang manor. The blaze burned fiercely, yet nobody died. Mara had not been careful enough hiding her movements. On her walk over to the ancestral hall, she disturbed several guards. The moment fire flared up, they spotted it. They moved fast and put the flames out. All of that had been within my expectations, so I felt no real disappointment. Mara's legs suffered burns. Terror twisted her mind until she seemed almost insane. Even so, she immediately twisted everything around to lay blame on me. "I came out of kindness to visit my younger sister," she shrieked. "I never expected her to set fire and try to murder me. She hoped to heap every crime onto my head. Naturally, I would not let her succeed. Do you think nobody saw you sneak in here in the dead of night? Do you believe setting a fire leaves no trace behind? You failed to kill me and now you try to frame me. Do you truly believe I dare not report you to the authorities?" Those few words left her speechless. But Father stood nearby. She believed she held his support. She still tried to argue her innocence, that I slapped her hard across the face. "Do you think I dare not strike you anymore?" The sharp crack of that slap jolted Mother. She hurried forward and pulled Mara into her arms. She comforted her, then turned toward me and told me to hold my tongue. "That, enough. She is already badly hurt. Say no more." Father glared fiercely at me. But he had seen and understood exactly how everything unfolded. He could not lash out at me openly. He waved his hand and ordered me to leave the hall. Setting fire to the ancestral hall counted as a grave offense. It could not be brushed aside. Father ordered servants to bring out the household's punishment tools. But when he saw Mara weeping so pitifully, he still could not bring himself to strike her. That kind of principle-free indulgence was not love. It only pushed her to grow more reckless. One day she would create a disaster no person could cover up. At that point, nobody on earth would be able to save her. I believed that day drew near. My wedding day with Chani was fast approaching. The date had been set long ago. The Chun family had asked the Imperial Astronomical Bureau to pick an auspicious day for our union. The Jiang household should have been bustling for weeks with wedding preparations. But Father and Mother were occupied repairing the fire-damaged ancestral hall. All wedding duties landed entirely on my shoulders. That a few days later, while I was out shopping for wedding supplies, I spotted Mara browsing the very same shops. She was supposed to be home recovering from her burn injuries. I sent my maid Lumiao back to the estate to investigate. When Lumiao returned, she brought shocking news. Mara had arranged yet another marriage. She planned to wed very soon. Her groom was Prince Rui, an imperial relative old enough to be her grandfather. Lumiao looked utterly confused. Prince Rui is so old he could be eldest young lady's grandfather. What could she possibly hope to gain from such a marriage? My lips curved. No true amusement reached my eyes. What she wants is to destroy me. It seems Prince Rui is the husband she personally picked for me. Prince Rui was an aged libertine. He had a terrible reputation for reckless, unrestrained behavior. He had once committed indecent acts out in broad daylight. Despite his imperial bloodline, no respectable family wanted to give him their daughter as a bride. Ever since his first princess consort passed away, the position of his principal wife had sat vacant for many years. Mara had volunteered to step right into that household. Worse still, she deliberately chose our exact same wedding day. Her intentions could not have been any plainer. I later learned Father had refused at first. He told her if her ruined reputation made marriage difficult, he could send her back to our clan's ancestral hometown and find her a decent husband there. But Mara insisted on wedding Prince Rui. She even threatened to take her own life if he stood in her way. Father's eventual agreement meant he must have understood her plan, and he silently allowed it to move forward. As for Mother, in my past life, she had thought marriage to Kale would be a good match for Mara. She had helped cover up the bride swap back then. But this time, Prince Rui's household was clearly a pit of fire. Once Mother fully grasped Mara's plot, would she warn me? I dared not dwell on that question. I did not wish to. Every single step had to be prepared by my own hands. The eve of the wedding arrived quickly. I was trying on my bridal robes, having my wedding makeup applied, when my brother Kian came to visit me. He studied at White Deer Academy. Normally he only received 1 day of leave every month. He had specially requested permission to return home for the wedding. But when he looked at me, there was no joy or blessing in his gaze. Only guilt. A second sister, he began, speaking haltingly. Tomorrow I want to escort eldest sister to her new husband's estate. She protected me through all our childhood. Now that she is marrying into Prince Rui's manor, I will not feel at peace unless I go along and see her safely settled. But if I escort her procession, I cannot see you off on your wedding day. He lifted a teacup with both hands. I offer you tea in place of wine today. Please forgive me. I did not take the cup. I said nothing. My gaze drifted past him. Mara stood just behind his shoulder. She also held a teacup. She stepped forward reluctantly. Very well. My reputation lies in ruins. My leg still bears injury. I fear people inside Prince Rue's household will look down on me. That is why I insisted Kian come along. He will give me courage. If you must blame someone, blame me. Do not blame him. I still offered no reply. I looked straight deep into Kian's eyes. I spoke one slow word at a time. Do you truly wish for my forgiveness? Surprise flickered across his face. His pupils tightened. He turned his gaze away from mine. Of course I do. My heart turned ice cold in an instant. Kian and I shared the same birth mother. But ever since we were small, he had always favored Mara. When they were children, Mara took him fishing. She helped him climb trees. She led him over hills and across streams. Once he began school, she visited him often. Whenever their teacher struck his palms with a ruler, Mara applied medicine to his wounds. As he grew older, she fussed over how hard studying was for him, speaking to him in soft, tender tones. I had done all of those same things for him. My care had been no less sincere or warm, but he had simply never noticed. In his eyes, only Mara ever existed. Whenever he failed to memorize his lessons and got struck on the palms, Mara would shed sad tears. She would say, "If you had not hurt your head in that bandit attack long ago, you would memorize everything perfectly." When he passed the provincial scholar examination, yet failed every higher test afterward, she comforted him gently. "If not for that old head injury stopping you from reading for long stretches, you would never struggle so." That head injury had happened during the mountain bandit raid. Mara tripped and fell on top of me. Kian got crushed underneath our weight. His head smashed against a sharp stone. He bled heavily. Ever after that, he often suffered terrible headaches. He could not focus his attention for long periods. And the person responsible for that injury was Mara herself. That once I accidentally overheard Mara making insinuations to him. I told Kian the truth. He refused to believe me. He claimed I slandered her, that I wanted to break the bond between them. I could never tell whether he trusted Mara so completely he never doubted her words, or if he simply needed someone else to blame for his repeated failures in the imperial examinations. Neither possibility excused what he planned to do. Help Mara swap brides and push me straight into Prince Rue's brutal household. That in my previous life, I would never forgive him for that betrayal. Back then, I drank the cup of apologetic tea he offered. I lost consciousness immediately. He took that chance to swap Mara and me. He sent my unconscious body to Prince Kale's household. Kale's family were honest-hearted people. Because they cared for Kale, they treated all three of us Zhang siblings kindly. When Kian told them I was worn out and had fallen asleep, they suspected nothing. They carried my unconscious form through the wedding rituals. They laid me in the bridal chamber to rest. Kian stayed at the wedding feast. He toasted Kale over and over, calling him brother-in-law, urging him to drink more wine. When I woke up, it was already the next morning. Kale lay beside me, just sobering up from heavy drinking. Nothing physical had happened between us. Yet fate had already been sealed. There was no way to undo what had taken place. The despair of that moment nearly drowned me. Meanwhile, Mara copied my mannerisms, my habits, my way of speaking. She took my place inside Kale's household. Chun-Yi saw through her the moment they entered the bridal chamber. He flew into a rage and chased her out. Mara lied shamelessly. She claimed I had chosen to marry Kale of my own free will. If he refused to believe her, she told him to go verify for himself. That of course Chun-Yi would not believe her. That very same night, he snuck into Kale's estate intending to rescue me. But what he saw was Kale and me asleep in the same bed. Our bodies drawn close together in slumber. Heartbroken, he fled the capital that night. Mara told me every bit of this story herself. When I lay dying, she could not stand the cold treatment she received from the Chun family. She could not bear Chun-Yi's disappearance. Most of all, she could not accept that her careful schemes had turned her into a laughingstock. So she shifted all blame onto me. On the day I returned to my birth home after marriage, she caught me off guard. She poured violent poison into my teacup. My insides felt as though they were being torn apart. I rolled across the floor screaming in agony. She stood over me, triumph shining in every line of her face. "Just wait," she said. "You hurt Chun-Yi so deeply his heart is shattered. When he comes back, I will give him warmth and care. In the end he will accept me." Blood blurred my vision. I cursed her cruelty. I swore retribution would find her. She laughed until she doubled over. "Retribution? You still do not understand. Father and mother have already decided what story they will tell. They will announce you fell gravely ill and died suddenly. Nobody will investigate me. Even your husband's family stands with father. Kale may feel pity for you, but one piece of wood cannot hold up an entire mansion. He cannot save you. Where will your retribution come from?" The tea has gone cold. Kian's voice pulled me back out of my terrible memories. He poured another cup from the teapot and held it toward me. "Second sister, I truly never meant to neglect your wedding day. Please forgive me." His pleading expression was identical to the one he wore in my past life. He planned to use the exact same trick. Drug me unconscious, send me in Mara's place to Prince Rue's manor. Inside my heart I laughed coldly. But I did not expose him. I accepted the cloudy-looking teacup. I drank it all down in one long gulp. "Do not worry. I forgive you." He knew exactly what kind of man Prince Rue was. Even knowing that, he still intended to send me there. In that case, he needed to face the consequences of his own choices. Once he had endured them and repaid the blood debt he owed me, then I might truly grant forgiveness. Kian had no idea what was about to unfold. He and Mara each finished drinking their cups of apology tea. I silently counted breaths. Before long, both of them collapsed, completely unconscious. Qing, one of my maids, stood nearby holding the tea tray. She let out a long breath and patted her chest. "You frightened me half to death. Thank goodness they passed out. For a moment I feared I had swapped the wrong cups." Qing and Lu Miao were younger sisters to the guard captain, who had died during the mountain bandit attack. Our household never paid any compensation for his death. His family lived in crushing poverty afterward. I often gave them money from my own monthly stipend. That was how we became acquainted. Then famine struck. Grain grew so scarce people starved. I could not stop them from being sold. So I arranged for them to be bought into the Jiang manor as servants. I had hoped to keep both sisters in my own courtyard. But Mara took Qing away. She assigned her to heavy cleaning work in the outer courtyard. She beat her and cursed her often. As Mara grew older and found new sources of amusement, she slowly forgot about Qing stuck in that neglected corner. That was when I gained the chance to help Qing win Mara's trust bit by bit. Eventually Qing became one of Mara's most trusted personal servants. It was Qing who secretly swapped the drug tea this night, that I called Lu Miao over. The two sisters worked together to carry Qian and Mara away. The doses they received differed greatly. Mara had drunk far more of the drug. She would stay unconscious until the following evening, perfectly timed for her bridal chamber. Qian only got a light dose. He woke up not long afterward. "Why did I fall asleep?" he mumbled, confused. Then he spotted Mara dressed in full red bridal wedding robes, her face hidden under the heavy veil. She lay motionless as if deep in slumber. His expression grew complicated. "Second sister, do not hate me," he whispered toward the veiled figure, convinced it was me. "I do not wish to do this either. But eldest sister has suffered so much. She lost her mother young. The man she loves is set to marry you. If I do not help her, what will become of her?" Perhaps some small spark of guilt lived within him. He dared not lift the veil to look at the person underneath. He trusted Qing's report that every detail was arranged. Without double-checking, he walked away. He drank wine to quiet his inner unease. At midnight, Qing slipped in to give me news. My heart remained completely unmoved. The sympathy he showed was fake. It was no more genuine than a cat crying over a dead mouse. I held Qing's hands. I repeated every instruction carefully. I gave her a special warning. The next day, she and Lu Miao needed to find a way to escape. Under no circumstances were they allowed to ride in Mara's wedding procession toward Prince Rue's estate. I had already purchased land and houses for the two sisters. Once this whole affair finished, I would return their indenture papers and grant them full freedom. Even so, I feared accidents might happen. I stayed awake the entire night, that when dawn broke completely, the Jiang household slowly stirred to life. Clan elders and close female friends arrived to offer blessings for both brides. Qian stopped all of them at the courtyard gates. He told everyone both sisters were exhausted and needed rest. He begged guests not to disturb us. Father stood beside him. He backed up that excuse. Mother was busy greeting visitors. That only then did I finally understand why in my past life, nobody noticed anything wrong on such a crowded wedding day. Everyone was intentionally clearing a path for Mara's scheme. I looked toward Mother one last time. Worry clouded her face, yet she took no action to intervene. I gave a cold smile. I turned away and stepped into my bridal sedan chair. That the Jiang household held the first half of my life. It had also been my nightmare. The manor drifted farther and farther behind, until it vanished completely. Before me stretched a brand new life, one I could write with my own two hands. Smiling, I entered the Chun household. That we performed every ceremony in proper order. We bowed to heaven and earth. We bowed to the elders. We bowed to one another. Servants led us into the bridal chamber. After we drank the wedding nuptial wine together, I stopped Chen Yi before he could move forward further. I looked at him eager. You still have not told me what unfolded over at Prince Rui's manor. Until I know Mara's fate, I cannot fully relax. My influence cannot reach inside Prince Rui's estate. I do not know the rest of what you arranged. Chen Yi looked put upon. My wife, a spring night is worth 1,000 pieces of gold. Must we speak of people and events that ruin our mood? I shot him a pointed look. Tell me quickly. He sighed as though surrendering completely. I did not do all that much. I simply swapped the incense inside Prince Rui's bridal chamber. It was the exact same tainted incense Mara once tried to use against me. Prince Rui never cared whether the person before him was man or woman. In past years he kept many handsome male favorites. If Qian acted as he did in our past life, drinking heavily and personally escorting the bride into the chamber, then he would truly be in terrible luck. Excitement flickered in my eyes. Chen Yi's throat bobbed. My wife looks quite satisfied with how this played out. But I expended so much effort setting it all up. Now I am thirsty. Wait a moment. I will pour you some water. I tried to stand up, but he caught hold of one of my wrists and pulled me straight into his arms. There is no need. He held me firm. His eyes darkened. His voice dropped to a low rumble. I will take what I want myself. Before I could fully process his words, he lowered his head and kissed me. Our breaths tangled together. At last I understood exactly what he meant. My whole face burned hot with embarrassment. Still, I did not pull away. I thought of that small secret book I had once read in private. I responded to him, shy yet resolute. The result of that was that the next morning, long after the sun climbed high in the sky, I had to push a still restless Chen Yi away. My legs felt unsteady as I climbed out of our bed. Fortunately, his parents and the other household elders were experienced. Not one of them scolded us. Instead, they each greeted me warmly and handed over wedding gifts. After I received a huge pile of presents, Chen Yi led me back to our room to rest. He knew he had gone too far the night before. He volunteered to massage my shoulders and my back. But as he kept going, his hands slowly grew far less well-behaved. I truly had no strength left to put up with him. Finally, desperate for escape, I suggested we go out for a while. I do not wish to go out. I am exhausted. I told him that the carriage will be lined with thick cushions. You can lie down. You will not grow tired. Besides, do you not wish to witness the commotion? My eyes flew open. Where? Outside Prince Rui's manor. My curiosity sparked instantly. I followed him out and climbed into the carriage. We arrived just as Qian was being carried out of the estate. He was dead. A white cloth covered his body. One arm dangled over the side of the stretcher. Dark, inescapable bruises marked the exposed skin. Word spread among onlookers. Unable to bear the humiliation, he had bitten through his own tongue and ended his life. Prince Rui was old, but he knew countless cruel tricks. Qian had been raised steeped in the teachings of wise sages. He always prided himself on proper conduct. It was not surprising he chose death rather than endure such shame. What he never expected was that death would not immediately free him. His body was left in a pitiful state that when his remains were carried back to the Jiang household, father and mother could not bear the sight. They took his corpse to the imperial palace and filed an official accusation. Prince Rui was the reigning emperor's paternal uncle. Naturally, the emperor could not listen only to one side of the story. He issued an imperial summons. Every person connected to this affair was called to appear at court. Even though I had married into the Chen household, I remained a daughter of the Jiang clan. So I also received the summons. Chen Yi worried for me. He said that as the Jiang family's son-in-law, he would accompany me. All along our journey, he held my hand tight. He said very little, yet the support he gave was silent and unshakable. When we stepped inside the great imperial hall, Prince Rui was already present. Tears streamed down his face. He held his aching waist and cried out his grievances. Your Majesty, judge this matter fairly. I am already so old. Why would I deliberately harm young Master Qian of the Jiang household? Last night was my wedding night. He followed us into the bridal chamber, and then threw himself upon me. Truly I could not hold him off. Strictly speaking, I am also a victim. The entire hall fell dead silent. Father never imagined an imperial prince could act so shamelessly. His whole body shook with rage. You speak nonsense, he shouted. My Qian always upheld proper conduct. He guarded his purity. To his final day, he knew nothing of relations between men and women. How could he possibly throw himself at you? Mother sobbed until tears and mucus streamed down her face. She rushed forward, ready to strike Prince Rui. You dishonored my son while he lived. Now that he is dead, you heap filth upon his good name. You are not even human. Prince Rui would not sit still and take the blow. He hurried to dodge all around the hall. He kept talking without pause. I am not lying. Your daughter is also a witness. She saw every single thing with her own eyes. Mara appeared badly shaken. She sat weakly upon the stone floor. She kept repeating the same sentence over and over. How could this happen? How could this happen? Chaos erupted in the hall. Veins bulged on the emperor's forehead. The chief censor knew how to read his mood. He immediately shouted for silence. Everyone snapped back to their senses and dropped to their knees. The emperor did not speak right away. His deep gaze swept over every single person in that great hall. The pressure felt almost tangible. My scalp tightened. I instinctively slowed my breathing. At last he spoke, his voice low. Mara Jiang, is Prince Rui's account the truth? Mara trembled. She pressed her body flat against the floor. Fear made her words muddled and uncleared. It is true. But none of this should have unfolded this way. It should not have. As if something suddenly dawned on her, she pointed an accusing finger straight at me. The woman who was supposed to marry Prince Rui was alone. She must have interfered. Every gaze in the hall turned toward me. Mother stared in shock and grief. Father's eyes looked ready to burst. Only the emperor watched me with measured suspicion. Is what Mara claims true? After a short moment of thought, I bowed low until my forehead touched the floor. Your Majesty, this subject's wife cannot understand what she speaks of. In a steady, calm voice, I recounted everything in proper order. How Mara had first demanded we swap our betrothals. How she repeatedly tried to trap Chen Yi. How her own schemes destroyed her engagement to Kale. How she had insisted on marrying Prince Rui of her own volition. I left out only the counter schemes Chen Yi and I had set in motion. Finally I straightened my back. Prince Rui was the husband she chose for herself. Qian also chose to escort her. This subject truly cannot understand what went wrong. Now that disaster has struck, she places all blame upon me. I beg your Majesty to render a fair judgment. Everything I described was established fact. Mara could not refute a single point. In desperation, she confessed she had planned to drug me unconscious and swap our wedding places. Even so, she still tried to shift every shred of blame onto me. She insisted I must have tampered with her plot to make it fail. But it was already far too late. Servants who had traveled with Mara to Prince Rui's manor gave their confessions. Investigating officials presented written statements bearing their fingerprints. The elderly maids who served Mara could not withstand interrogation. They laid bare every shameful deed she had ever committed. According to their signed confessions, Mara had lusted after Chani. She had set one scheme after another to obtain him. She ordered them to procure aphrodisiac drugs. To guarantee her wedding night went as she wished, she even stashed extra doses of those drugs inside the clothing worn next to her skin. The maids also revealed how she had faked various illnesses since childhood, purely to compete for father's affection. The Imperial Medical Bureau finished their examinations as well. Traces of that same stimulant drug remained in Prince Rui's, Mara's, and Kian's systems. Those traces came from the incense burned in the bridal chamber. That incense, heavy with stimulants, had been prepared by the old maids on Mara's direct orders. That Prince Rui instantly grew triumphant. I am already in my 60s. Yet she gave me such a powerful dose. This princess consort truly will stop at nothing to hide the fact she is no longer untouched. Vicious woman. Even her own younger brother was not spared. He turned toward the imperial throne and began demanding justice. I wish to repudiate her, Your Majesty. I am the victim. You must settle this matter for me. The emperor pressed one hand against his forehead. Witnesses and hard material evidence were complete. He had no wish to dig into every hidden detail. He passed judgment on the spot. Amara Jiang. For cruel and devious plotting, you are sentenced to drink poison wine. Carry out the sentence immediately. Mara could not believe she would really be put to death. She crawled across the floor toward father, begging for rescue. Father, I lost my mother when I was small. You raised me with your own hands. You cannot watch me die. Father, save me. The poison swap was something you knew about, and you silently agreed to it. Save me. But father was powerless. He could only stand there, helpless, as palace attendants forced the bitter poisoned liquid down her throat. In the end, she walked down the exact same path she had laid out for me in my past life. The poison ate her away from inside, and she died writhing in agony. Kian's death had been an accident. Yet Prince Rui still bore partial responsibility for what had happened. The emperor stripped him of 1 year's salary and confined him to his manor grounds, forbidding him from stepping outside. Then the emperor's anger turned toward father. He hurled a hard-carved ornament across the hall. It struck father square on the forehead, leaving a large, swollen welt. How could you grow so foolish in your old age? He thundered. Still, out of respect for father's long-past service to the throne, the emperor granted him a final shred of dignity. He ordered father to submit an official memorial requesting retirement from all official duties. Effective immediately. Father took mother back to the family's remote ancestral hometown. A few days later, I went to see them off. Father's hair had turned completely gray. His back was permanently hunched, no longer able to stand straight. Mother looked even more haggard, almost like a walking corpse. When she laid eyes on me, she stared for a very long time. Then she suddenly broke into violent sobs. Aloan, Kian is gone. Now I only have you left. I had heard that exact same broken weeping once before. It happened in my previous life, when poison was tearing my body apart. Mara had already fled the room. Mother knew full well Kian had taken part in swapping the brides' places. Father had persuaded her to spread the lie that I had fallen suddenly mortally ill and passed away. Guilt had gnawed away at her back then. She had held me in her arms and shaken with tears. She had told me she wanted to avenge me, that she wished she could kill Mara with her own 2 hands. But there was nothing she could do to save me. Kian still needed to sit for the official examinations. His reputation could not be ruined. She had no choice, she'd said. He was all she had left. After all, I was her own flesh and blood child. I knew she held some affection for me. When I fell ill, she would sit by my bedside all night without changing her clothes. When I got hurt, she would cry until her eyes turned red and puffy. But that love for me could never weigh heavier than father's blind fondness for Mara. Nor could it compare to the glory and status she hoped Kian might one day bring her. So when she stumbled forward and tried to pull me into an embrace right then, I stepped backward and avoided her arms entirely. Mother, I am already married. From this day forward, the only family you have left is father. She froze where she stood. Her tear-filled eyes widened in utter disbelief. I placed a cloth travel bundle into her arms, turned, and walked away without glancing back even once. Halfway through the following year, a letter arrived from the ancestral hometown. It was written in mother's hand. Eloan, I have fallen ill. Can you come home to visit me? I have picked the fruit you love the most. It is bright red and sweet. I stared for a long time at the tear-stained paper, at the shaky, messy handwriting. Finally, I picked up my writing brush and penned a short reply. Mountains stand high, rivers stretch long, and the journey is hard. I will not come for the fruit. Please take good care of yourself, mother. 6 months after sending my reply, news of her death reached the Chen estate. She had died in the depth of a frigid winter night. Even in her final moments, her hand still clutched that fruit. It had dried up, shriveled, turned completely black.